Well, welcome to another Thyalwaysseek Q&A live stream. We are doing Black Hole Sun and Recent Celestial Events 2.0 because, as some of you may have realized, I did delete the last live stream. I was very unprepared, guys. I didn't have my notes together in any real coherent way. I was, basically confusing my own notes for other notes, and I just didn't feel that I relayed the information in a very coherent way at all. And I think that this is pretty important information, and if I am going to take the time to relay this information to you guys, then I want to do it as accurately as I can. So I've gone back, I have reassessed all of my notes, I have made sure that I haven't got them all mixed up, and I've actually also gone through the video of Eric Dollard, and I have written down what he says in the video. Hello, Rochelle, nice to see you. And just before we start, guys, I just want to go over some basic rules of the chat. Rochelle is our moderator. We do ask that you don't continually chat and just put down opinion in the chat. It really is about just relaying all of this information. If you do have any information that connects to what I am discussing, then we do welcome that, but it must be actually backed up with verifiable sources. Okay, so we don't just want opinion. We want verifiable sources. So if you are somebody who has researched this information and you want to put forth your own theory, or you have an opinion that differs from the information that I am giving, then we welcome this addition to the discussion, but we do ask that you provide all of your sources and the reasoning behind how you come to the conclusion you did, because unfortunately what we normally get is a lot of people just really giving their opinion because they heard it somewhere, they saw it somewhere, they read it somewhere, and all it does is create more white noise, and that's not what we want. So all of this knowledge here is well researched. If you differ in opinion to the information that I am imparting in this live stream, then I would ask that you would show why you don't agree with what I am saying, and then the sources for your own conclusions that, can basically back up your own opinions and information, because I think that's only fair. I mean, I'm not just someone that showed up and decided to do a live stream. I've got 12 years of research and studies to back my information here that I'm revealing and relaying to everybody. And I think it just comes down to basic decency, that if you are going to have a different opinion, then you need to kind of show why you came to that conclusion. And it would be helpful if you are someone who also has a channel that is full of your own studies and research, because unfortunately it seems that a lot of people who like to argue and debate with me have empty channels. And it's also interesting that when I do videos in regards to this type of information, I do seem to attract the trolls and the shills. So we aren't really going to put up with anybody trying to, cause problems and trouble, and who just want to distract. You will just be blocked. So hopefully we don't have any of that tonight. We did in the last stream, and it did actually distract me, and I'm hoping that this doesn't occur again. But as I said, Rochelle is going to be moderating. I can also moderate as well. So anybody who is not here to actually, you know, benefit from this information because they're not really interested in this information, they're just interested in pushing their own opinions, then you are not welcome on the live stream. So I have always said, just take what I'm relaying here and I will try and back it up with as much evidence that I have found and gathered as I can. And then you guys go and do, you know, more research. And that is what I was actually requesting in the last video I did in regards to this. I did request that if anybody has seen mythology or has seen information that can help to build upon what we already have here, then I welcome it. So I think a few people misunderstood what I meant when I said that. So it doesn't mean that I want you to give me completely different theories that you've heard somewhere else, because I'm pretty certain that every single theory that you're going to provide me, I've already heard. As I said, I've been doing this for 12 years. So what I want is to build upon what we already have. I'm not interested in any other theories. I'm not interested in looking at any other channels unless they're already talking about what I'm talking about here. And I, you know, did have somebody who posted, you need to go look at this channel. And when I went and had a look at the channel, it was Flat Earth and talking about parasites that travel through portals in the sun. So look, I know your agenda when you are doing that. So I don't know why you bother with me. I've been doing this far too long. You know, I know already what you're doing when you're putting that type of information on my channel and how you're trying to have people fall into the ditch. You know, you're steering people down false paths. So I'm just going to remove what you say. I don't care about, you know, I'm not one of those people that have this, you know, kind of religious belief in not blocking people and deleting people. I've got no problem in that. Okay, so if you think that you've got me, you know, because, oh, well, she just won't block and remove me or delete me because she doesn't want people to think that she blocks and removes and censors people, that's not me. I will remove it. I will delete it and I will block you. So don't go putting any of your shit on my channel. I don't want it, okay? But as I said, guys, anybody who's a serious student and who does want to contribute to what I'm going to relay in this video, then I absolutely welcome it. So now that we've got that little bit out of the way there, let's just go over what I'm going to be discussing tonight. Okay, so I'm going to give a little bit of an overview. So in this live stream, we're going to cover a couple of things. So firstly, we've got some new pictures of the sun. We've got some really cool close-up pictures of sunspots, and that is what kind of got me in, you know, interested in going back into Eric Dollard's information, because it's really confirming what Eric Dollard said and also confirming what the esoteric knowledge says all the way back to ancient Egypt, and that is that the sun is hollow. The sun is actually a black hole. Now, when I say black hole, I'm not actually saying black hole using the physics model of the establishment scientists, NASA. Okay, I'm talking about a magnetic vortex. Okay, so black holes aren't magnetic. Okay, they use a completely different type of physics when they are trying to explain their black hole, because their job is to keep you away from the truth. But the actual physics that I'm going to show you today is based on the electric universe model and can actually be demonstrated. Okay, so NASA's models cannot be demonstrated. They're only theoretical, meaning they need equations and mathematics to explain their science, but they cannot actually prove their science in a laboratory situation. The electric universe model is very different. They can actually prove all of their electric magnetic models of the universe. So these sunspots I thought were very, very interesting. So we're going to look into them. So also there are a couple of celestial events that I wanted to cover. One is Betelgeuse's brightening more than any other time in recorded history. And the other one is about a star in the constellation Ursa Major, which is also called the Greater Bear constellation, and that is also brightening. In fact, it's the brightest supernova that has been closest to us in 10 years. Okay, now I don't know about you guys, but I don't actually remember any other supernovas brightening to the point where we can actually see it with it, just a normal average telescope in our own backyards. And I don't remember the media reporting about any supernovas bursting in 2011 or brightening in 2011 to the way that this one has brightened and will continue to brighten and stay bright for the next few months, according to their article and the information that they are relaying about this this supernova, or this star. Basically, it's a star that has had a brightening event. It's basically a starburst. So I'll go into that a little bit more, and I will touch on some mythologies and some prophecies that mention this type of activity that we can see regarding celestial events. Okay, so I think you'll find that quite interesting. So that star is located in the Pinwheel Galaxy, and while that is interesting that it has been discovered in the Pinwheel Galaxy, we're going to be discussing the significance of it appearing in the Greater Bear constellation, because I did have somebody that said, oh, but it's in the Pinwheel Galaxy. Well, we're actually looking at these celestial events and we're correlating them to mythologies and prophecy. And so the Greater Bear constellation dates back to ancient Greek and ancient Rome. So that's why we're looking at the constellation that this event is happening in, because when we were left this type of knowledge, this information for us to continue watching for these signs to know what part of the cycle we're in, they didn't give us galaxy names. They gave us constellation names, and then they repeated the mythology over and over again with these constellations, because constellations are something that the Antichrists, who have now gone out of their way to destroy as much knowledge as they can, they can't screw with them, okay, with all of the mythologies and how they're related to the constellations. And you'll actually see that a lot of the mythologies about certain constellations, not all of them, but certainly a lot of them, can actually correlate within different cultures too. So they've tried to keep some of these constellations very similar to each of the mythology that they have encoded within the constellation. So that's what they did with the constellations, and why you look at a constellation and, it's the Greater Bear constellation, but hang on a minute, it doesn't look like a bear. It's just so that they could encode mythology around that constellation, because they knew that they could screw with our calendar, they could screw with the days of the week, okay, but they can even screw with our time, and they try and do that with daylight savings and everything. But they can't screw with the constellations. They can't screw with the stars. Okay, the stars remain the same no matter what. They're not that good. All right, so that is why we pay attention to the constellation and the mythology and the prophecies that are connected to the constellation, rather than focusing on it in the Pinwheel Galaxy. Okay, so there's that. All right, so let's start with the photos of the sunspots. And I have actually got some photos of these sunspots in the photos that I'm showing you. And the artworks that I'm showing you are also of Walter Russell, but I'll get into Walter Russell a little bit later, because it is in regards to the Pinwheel Galaxy and that supernova. So let's keep going. So on Sunday, So let's start with the new pictures of the sun. On May the 19th, the National Science Foundation released new high-resolution images from the Daniel K. Inouye Solar Telescope. And so I just wanted to tell you what Tony Phillips, let's call him by his, correct name. Dr. Tony Phillips, NASA shill from spaceweather.com. He had something really interesting to say about these sunspots, and that's what actually made me have a bit of a laugh, because it's just ridiculous that they're trying to describe what's happening with these sunspots the way they are, and they basically think we're idiots, okay? And most people are idiots, because they will just hang off the every word of what these astrophysicists say. Even if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't matter, because, these astrophysicists wear a white coat. They have doctor before their first name, and they have basically attended a university course. So, and, received a little piece of paper to tell us how intelligent they are. So, they are, someone that apparently we've got to pay attention to and listen to, even when what they say isn't very logical. And let me just remind you that every single prediction that spaceweather.com has made so far this year in regards to geomagnetic storms has been incorrect. And in fact, the most severe geomagnetic storm that we have had this solar cycle, because we're now in solar cycle 25, solar maxima, well, the most severe geomagnetic storm we've had in this solar cycle was a surprise geomagnetic storm that they weren't expecting. And we were seeing, auroras in places that we've never seen them before, for a very long time anyway. I'm not saying in history, but it was definitely a very, very strong solar storm. So, what he said about these sunspots is laughable. He basically said that the little yellow dots that you can see inside these sunspots were called umbral dots, incandescent balls of plasma rising and falling in the otherwise dark heart of the sunspot. Researchers believe they are turbulent convection cells which dredge up heat from 100 kilometers below. Okay, let's just reverse a little bit. Researchers believe, okay, don't know, believe. So this is their theory, and he's saying that this plasma is falling into the sunspot, into the middle of the sun. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I'm looking at the pictures of those sunspots, it seems to me that those magnetic filaments, those magnetic plasma filaments are being pulled into the heart of the sun, into the sun, pulled into the sun magnetically. Okay, and so that brings me to the next very interesting bit of information when I had a look in regards to magnetic vortices. Now, if we can imagine that the middle of the sun is a vortex, which it is, just like the middle of our spiritual heart is a vortex, and we will go into that a little bit further on into the video, I found some information, some research, which is actually something that can be tested in a laboratory situation. Okay, so it's not just theoretical. This is actually science that can be actually measured, and, you can actually see this science, and it can be viewed, unlike just their, mathematical equations. So this is from the Nature Journal. And it basically says that magnetic vortices can form when electron spins swirl in a circle within a plane. At the center of the circle, the swirl becomes smaller, and eventually the magnetization of the core tilts out of the plane, similar to a tornado. Well, we don't really, I'm just mainly looking at the fact that vortices can create magnetic electric charges. Okay. So if the middle of the sun was a vortex, it's creating electricity and magnetism. And if those plasma filaments are magnetic, then yes, they can be drawn towards that vortex. Okay. And at certain parts of the cycle, there seems to be instability that happens within that vortex of the sun. So this happens every 11 years. Okay, the sun goes through a change, and it becomes more active. This has been waning. I'll go into that a little bit more with what Eric Dollard says, but last solar cycle, and this solar cycle isn't acting like it should either, like they expected and predicted. But last solar cycle was one of the weakest on record. Okay, so our solar cycles have been weakening and our solar flux has been weakening, and that in turn is weakening our magnetosphere, and it's affecting our ionosphere as well. Now, you'll see that I've actually got a picture of, it's just a screenshot I've taken from SolarHam, and I literally check SolarHam every day. And I can tell you for at least the last 2 months straight, and probably longer, we have not had a day where there hasn't been some ionization happening with our upper atmosphere. And this is even when we have the most minimal activity on the sun, the most minimal flaring on the sun, we are getting ionization on the top of our atmosphere. Now, that did not happen last solar cycle. Okay, we only used to see ionization when we used to get flaring, an M flare, an X flare. We would start seeing the ionization on the top of our atmosphere. It would probably only last a day, and then it would go, it would dissipate. This doesn't happen anymore. The smallest amount of activity on the sun, the smallest amount of flaring on the sun is causing our upper layer of the atmosphere to react straight away, and it's ionizing straight away. So, we can look to the principle of correspondence, okay, as above, so below, and also that everything's connected. Okay, so everything's connected. So what is happening on the sun is connected to what is happening on our planet. But we can go beyond the sun too, and we will as we go further into this information that I'm bringing you, because it all starts at the galactic core, okay, which is feeding the energy to our sun as well. So I just wanted to show that it is definitely applicable to these photos that you're seeing now of these filaments being drawn into the sun. Now, does that look like that the sun is a furnace? Or does the sun look empty to you? Does the sun look black to you? Does the sun look like a vortex or a vacuum to you? Because to me, that's what the sun is looking like. I'm not seeing no nuclear furnace burning, hot. And the other thing that doesn't make sense about the nuclear fusion at the center of the sun, which is causing the sun to burn and be this ball of fire in the sky, is that it should actually be hotter in the center, and it's not. The sun is actually hotter on the, externally than it is in its center. So again, showing that whatever's happening on the sun, whatever activity is happening on the sun is happening externally on the sun. So let's have a look at what Eric Dollard said about the sun, okay, and what the sun really is. So this is from his actual video. I've gone through and I've pulled out all of the relevant information from his video. I will actually post a link to his video when I post this in our study group, Keepers of the Flame. I will actually post a link to Eric Dollard's video where I've taken all of this information from, and then you can go and listen to him. So it's a very impromptu interview with Eric Dollard. He was literally caught off guard. He was sitting in his car and somebody has just caught him at the right time and started questioning him about the sun. And he starts giving information. And there's not very many videos available on YouTube when you look for this information. I only found 3 results. And so I think it's good that I've got this copy, and I will relay what was said in that video, and it will be on my video too, because this is very important information. So let's get started. So he goes on to say that the sun's activity changed in early Renaissance, 15th century. Now that is right around the time of the Catholic Inquisition. So that is when the sun started changing, and they started seeing changes in the sun. And then the sun peaked around World War II. And since then, the solar cycles have been weakening. So I found it interesting that when he said that the sun's activity changed in the early Renaissance. Now, there were astronomers around this time who were watching the sun and were watching the stars and, were watching the celestial movements, okay, of our heavens, right? And so, interestingly, prior to 1611, November 26, now this isn't about the sun, this is about Orion, okay? But there's a lot of information that started coming up around this same time that the sun changed. And it also started with Orion. Now, okay, given the fact that, early Renaissance is the 15th century, and this was 1611, we can still see that from the time that the sun started changing, there were changes happening with Orion as well. So I just wanted, before I go into more of what Eric Dollard said, I just think it's important that we do look at the fact that Orion was changing as well. So prior to November 26, 1611, the Orion Nebula was not mentioned by any astronomers, even though in 1610 Galileo never mentions it, and it was one of the first areas for his telescopic sweeps. So he does make mention of the other, parts of Orion and the stars of Orion and the belt, he makes mention of that, but he never mentions the Orion Nebula. And, he had, as I said, extensively observed the constellation of Orion, merely noting an increase in the number of stars in the region. So he was noting that there were more stars, okay, that could be viewed. But it wasn't until Nicholas Pericek, who made the first observation in November 26, 1611, he wrote and noted that he saw, and he was surprised to find, a small illuminated cloud in Orion. Okay, now that was between the 6th and 10th of December. So that was very interesting. And then Johann Baptist Cysat, or Cysatus, and now get this, guys, a Swiss Jesuit priest. You just can't get very far with any of this information or knowledge without them, making an appearance somewhere, can you? I just find it very interesting that we have a Jesuit priest who was the next to make a known observation in 1618 while comparing the nebula with a close-by comet that was visible at the time. So this creates one of the greatest conundrums in astronomy, because the nebula can be seen by the naked eye now. It doesn't make sense that it wasn't discovered prior to the 16th century when we can actually see it now with the naked eye, the nebula. The only explanation is that the nebula brightened. Okay, now to me, seeing that the Jesuit was the second person to see this nebula and make a note of it, they were waiting for it. And I think it's because they were already on their crusades around the world, stealing knowledge, hoarding all the knowledge that they could find, murdering, slaughtering, burning people alive, hacking them to death, whatever it took to take this knowledge, under the guise of saving people and converting people to Christianity. And what they were really doing was actually stealing all of this knowledge so that they could basically consolidate their power, because knowledge is power, guys. And once they took the knowledge from mankind, once mankind no longer had the knowledge for themselves, other than the fragments that survived the Catholic Church and their crusades, the Catholic Church could then create their own narrative, which they did. I mean, they started creating their own narrative 1700 years ago, way before the 15th century. Okay, so they just had to continually, as we were discovering, more cultures, because we were finding and traveling further afield, and finding new continents and new cultures. Well, the Catholic Church had to quickly go into these cultures, take the knowledge, burn and destroy what they couldn't hoard, and make sure that it wasn't going to destroy the narrative that they had created, because, they've even created our version of history. All right, we really don't know our history. And this is why it's so easy to muddy the well and poison the well. And now we have people making up bullshit stories that these lost civilizations, that literally just disappeared overnight, right? And they don't know how. Well, I can tell you that before they went into South America and they were hacking off people's faces, and literally they were hacking off their noses. You can find pictures of them doing this. I mean, they made a notation of their, handiwork. And we all know what they did to the South Americans, okay? And they were cutting off their arms and whatever, and then they created all these stories that the South Americans were, cannibals and, using human sacrifices and all of this information. And if you actually go and have a look, a lot of these illustrations about this human sacrifice, they created themselves. It was the Spanish that were making these illustrations, okay, because they had to justify what they were doing to these South Americans. And I can tell you now that they would have stolen a lot of knowledge, because the South Americans, now I'm not saying that the South Americans that were settled in that area were the same civilizations that had left all this knowledge and created the pyramid of the sun and, all of these calendars. They could have been, and there's no reason to say that they couldn't have been, related to them in some way as well. But what I'm saying is that the South Americans were great mathematicians, okay? That civilization were great mathematicians. I mean, they are so accurate with their calendars. Even today, they are measuring cycles that scientists were only finding, in the 20th century. That's how good they were at mathematics. And they could also understand the heavens. I mean, they discovered Pluto before it was even discovered by our modern astronomers. They already knew that Pluto existed. Okay, there are even tribes in Africa, that the Dogon tribes, that knew of the binary star that Sirius had before it was discovered by our modern astronomers. But the narrative today is that our modern astronomers are so smart. They're so smart because, Darwin's theory, and by the way, it is just a theory, says that, evolution, that people that were previous to our civilization, so our ancestors, couldn't have been smarter than we are. Okay, so that's the narrative that they're pushing. But again, they would have known that there were celestial events to watch for. The Mayans, they watched the skies so closely, and they would have definitely known what to look for, especially the brightening of stars and nebulas, as a way to determine what part of the cycle we were in. And so you can bet that the Jesuits and the Catholic Church were looking already at the heavens, and it just, is no coincidence that this dude, Johann Baptist Seisat, this Swiss Jesuit priest, was the second person to make a note of Orion brightening. So anyway, so I just wanted to show you that there were changes happening from early Renaissance, okay, not only with the sun, but also with the nebula. Because remember, okay, the Orion Nebula, remember, everything's connected from the macrocosm to the microcosm. Okay, and we're going to be seeing these changes happening more and more because everything is connected. So let's go on to look at, now I just did want to make a quick note that this information that I just brought you in regards to the Orion Nebula brightening was actually discovered by another researcher back in 2012. So Danny Wilton was the first person that I know of to actually look at this information and bring, you know, and relay this information to others. And he was very interested in the Orion Nebula. And so I just found it interesting because when I was looking for more information about what else was changing in the sky around that time that Eric Dollard said the sun was changing, I found this information about the Orion Nebula as well. And it was very, you know, it was just more confirmation that there were changes happening in this, you know, in our celestial heavens. And I just wanted to, make sure that I give credit where credit is due, because I don't want to, you know, take the research of others as though it was my own, especially when it's this type of research, and it's quite important research that does help us create a, you know, picture of what we're trying to put together here, so we can have the correct understanding of our model of the universe. So let's continue on with Eric Dollard and what he says about the sun. So he goes on to say, cycle 24 is the weakest in history. The sun only operating at half power. Sun could be reconfiguring. And then he goes on to say that there's a book about the theory called the Jupiter effect. And he says it's fairly accurate. A couple of scientists wrote this book about the Jupiter effect. And so he mentions that. And he mentions how planetary alignments affect solar activity. And that's what this book was about. And so I find it interesting that Jupiter plays a big role in this as well. And we'll go on, you know, to discuss about why Jupiter is so important in everything, and why Jupiter is also given the symbolism of the creator in Roman and Greek mythology. So he goes on to say that these authors predicted an alignment would cause powerful flares, and in October 1980, solar flares happened just like predicted and triggered Mount St. Helens eruption. Solar flux went up to 400, and he was saying that the solar flux normally sits around 130. So for it to go up to 400, that's pretty intense. And Earth actually wobbled on its orbit from the coronal mass ejections hitting it. Now you will see that I've included a couple of pictures. One is of this really huge CME that happened on the sun the other day, and it is massive. Okay, in fact, one of the guys that was watching the sun said it's the biggest he's ever witnessed. Okay, so it's not saying it's the biggest it's ever been. It's just that he watches the sun. He's an astronomer, and he said it's the biggest he's ever seen. Now, interestingly, right around that time, I think it was the next day, we've got an alignment of 5 planets. Okay, now, can we absolutely prove that it was the alignment of 5 planets that caused the sun to have that massive belch of plasma? No, we can't. But what we can do is just continue to gather information, and it's just very interesting that Eric Dollard is saying that the alignment of planets has an effect on the sun, and then we see an alignment of planets and we see the sun discharge a huge CME. Okay, that one of these astronomers is saying that it's the biggest he's ever seen. So that was on the spaceweather.com site. Look, I would really recommend anybody that's interested in space weather, you should actually be checking Solarham Daily and also spaceweather.com, and you should be able to sift through the NASA bullshit and use your own intellect to determine what is happening on the sun. Just ignore their, explanations. Half the time they're puzzled, half the time they don't know. We had some green blobs happen when we had that very, very severe surprise geomagnetic storm that I was talking about at the beginning of the stream, the one that they didn't know was going to happen, and then suddenly we've got this most severe geomagnetic storm, and for some reason we have all these green blobs just show up in the sky. It took them 3 weeks to actually explain what they were, and even then they were saying, we think this is what they were. So we can definitely see that there are changes happening, okay, and that this solar cycle is not like the previous solar cycle, that it's changing. We're seeing changes. And as I said to you guys, just looking and observing, see what happens is when you observe the data daily, like I do, so I observe the solar data daily and I observe the earthquake data daily. When you do that, you get to know patterns. You get to see patterns. You get to know when there's an earthquake that happens, well, oh, okay, gee, that place never normally gets earthquakes, okay, and you get to see earthquakes swarming. So before that volcano in Hawaii erupted a couple of years ago, I can't think of the bloody name, but anyway, I was already seeing the earthquake swarms happening 2 days prior, okay, because, and I was like, what the hell? Posted it in the group, earthquake swarms going on, this looks pretty interesting, and then bang, we have a volcanic eruption that lasted months and months and months. In fact, it was one of the strongest that they've had in centuries, I think, in modern history, okay. It went longer than the prior eruption that they had. And you know what? I wouldn't be living on Hawaii if I was you. Just saying. So anyway, so I just found that interesting, and that's why I wanted to include that picture of the planets aligned, the 5 planets aligned, and also that huge CME that happened a day prior to those planets lining up. So who knows? To me, it just seems that Eric Dollard is onto something because, well, we have evidence that it happened around the time of Mount St. Helens, and then we're seeing, the sun seem to react to these 5 planets. So anyway, it's just interesting. So then he goes on to say the sun controls all the frequencies. If you don't know what the sun's doing, you don't know what frequencies to use. That's why RCA started radio astrology. You have to know what the sun's doing, and the planets tell you what the sun's doing. RCA gave me the equipment. Sonoma University provided me with the place to do it. And the cosmos provided me with the planetary alignment. I was the guy with the equipment. I studied the whole event over a couple of years, that the whole solar cycle built into this alignment. The sun has no inside structure. There's only a surface. There's nothing inside. The sun is not burning anything. There's no fusion at the core. That's well understood. It's only in the flares that you get fusion. The flares, arcs, X-rays, and microwaves result in fusion. There's no internal fusion inside the sun. They don't know how the sun works. The sun is a transformer. It transforms energy from some other dimension, counter space. It's not burning anything. It doesn't have to. It's a converter. It's taking energy from counter space. There is no energy, actually. Most of it you can't even measure or see in outer space. You can't see the sun in free space. It's only visible when gross matter becomes involved. The Earth's atmosphere and envelope, surface of the moon or whatever, that makes the light. Otherwise, there is no light. You can see the moon, you can see the Earth, but you can't see the sun and you can't see the stars. You can see material objects, but you cannot see the sources of light until there is a material object to reflect off. So that means there's no time delay. So the whole time delay thing is meaningless. It doesn't take light years. There are no light years because there's no light. That means the light you see from the distant stars isn't 4 million years old. They could be only minutes old, could be instantaneous. All their theories collapse when you can't see the stars in outer space. Nuclear fusion is a religion, it's a law. The world must believe. That's all there is. The sun is an atomic bomb burning in the sky. If you don't believe that, you're going to jail. The sun is hollow. The sunspots are holes that allow you to see inside. It's dark inside. The sun is well understood in radiophysics. The sun does not operate by fusion. The fusion only comes out of the arcs because of the current density. That's where the hydrogen and the fusion occurs, in the actual arcs between the flares. The sun itself is not a fusion device. The sun is a converter from another dimensionality into this dimensionality. And obviously, if you can't see it in outer space, the conversion is not complete until it hits the Earth's atmosphere or another physical object. And then it finally converts to electromagnetic light. The sun is like a giant Tesla lamp. It's not burning anything. It's a converter. It's converting from primary force to secondary force. Once the emission interacts with physical matter, it reverts to its reduced form, the waste product, which is heat and light and mechanical activity. But it doesn't start off like that. Its origin is undefined because it comes from what people like to say another dimension, counter space. Sunspots are holes in the hollow sun. It's a photosphere that generates the light. It's continuous. It's arrangement of little glowing spots. It's an arrangement of little glowing spots, and it's dark in between. It's a veil, and that's where the illumination of the sun originates, from that veil. It doesn't come from the inside. There's no nuclear furnace in the middle. There's none of that, and that's understood. When I studied this stuff at Sonoma State, that was understood. But they have to continue this popular image of the sun is a nuclear bomb burning in the sky because everything's got to work on destruction. It has to be the law of thermodynamics. You have to pay. If you can't put a meter on it, it's not real. So, that is what Eric Dollard said about our sun. And that is what can be confirmed in the electric universe theory, in the esoteric knowledge when it comes to the ancient Egyptian understanding of the sun and its connection to the galactic core. And also it is what we can understand with Kabbalah and the Kabbalah tree of life. We can see it all explaining that the sun is a vortex. The middle of a sun is a vortex. Our hearts are a vortex. Okay, all of our chakras are vortexes, but our sun, our heart is the main vortex, where we were created from, literally, where we're connected to the Creator. And the middle of Orion is also a magnetic vortex, and that is connected to the galactic core. Okay, so there'll be more of that soon. So I just wanted to go into a little bit of Eric Dollard's bio, just so you know he's not some crazy dude that really doesn't have any credentials, because he's actually an electrical engineer, and he's the only person since Tesla's death to successfully build a real magnifying transmitter. So now you can kind of understand why they ridiculed and mocked and basically made Tesla's life a misery, okay, because they wanted to suppress his knowledge. Because as Dollard says, free energy is not conducive to us paying to exist on this planet. Okay, and as I've said, some of our largest bills that we have to pay are our energy bills. Okay, other than having to pay to have shelter, the next largest bills that we need to basically pay, and we have to pay them to exist in the system, are our energy bills. I mean, we can actually live on, noodles in a cup, baked beans. I mean, we can, really limit the amount of food that we buy if we are on a budget, but we can't do that when it comes to our electricity. We have to pay the bill that arrives in the mail. And it's a big bill, and they're getting bigger on purpose because they're creating these hardships in our life on purpose using the financial system, and the best way that they can do that is with energy. And you see this even with gas prices. Okay, they will increase the gas prices when they need to. I mean, it's all theatre, all theatre with all these OPEC countries, and then they get to determine how much a barrel is. They're all working together. It's theatre, guys. Okay, and it's all to keep us in a state of lack, because when we're in a state of lack, we're always competing with each other. We're always climbing over each other to try and survive, okay, and doing whatever it takes. And that's what they want to encourage in us. So he was employed by the US Navy, RCA, which is Radio Corporation of America, which was initially owned by General Electric, Westinghouse and AT&T, and also Bell Labs, which is now known as Nokia. Okay, so he has worked for these places, and they had him working at the Sonoma State University doing all of these studies and research, all of this research into radio astrology, because they knew that the planets and the configurations of the planets were what, affected the sun and the behavior of the sun. And again, this can be confirmed with the principle of correspondence, that everything is connected. They know that. They know Hermetic science is the true science. That's why it's never really mentioned, even in the New Age. I have to laugh. I mean, the only thing that people say in the New Age when you talk about Hermetics is as above, so below. I mean, that's all they know. Okay, that's it. You say, oh, have you heard of Hermetics? Oh, yeah, as above, so below. That's the absolute extent of their knowledge when it comes to Hermetics. And there's a reason for that. Okay. There's a reason that New Agers, all these big New Age channels and gurus like Greg Braden never speak about Hermetics. Okay? Because they don't want you knowing about Hermetics. Because Hermetic science, the 7 principles, will help you understand the universal model. And they don't want you knowing that. They want you being ignorant to the truth. So, anyway, I looked at his recent activity, and interestingly, he has not uploaded a video to his YouTube channel for 9 years. So I think we're lucky to get the information that he gave us about the sun. And he even made mention that it's a religion, it's a law, and if you don't believe and repeat the religion and the law of the sun that they tell you, you're going to jail. So he's kind of letting us know that the reason that he can't speak out about the sun, and he doesn't actually, all of the other information on his channel and his and he doesn't really have any activity, as I said, 9 years ago, but it's all about his electrical engineering. And even his Twitter, which he is active on, it's not a huge Twitter channel. He doesn't have a huge number of followers, a few thousand, I think. But again, it's all only in regards to his electrical research. It's not really anything more than that. He also claims that Ether Force tried to discredit him. And I do remember when, I was aware of him back in 2012, something happened, because everyone got interested in his work when we started listening to him about, this basically became viral, this information about the sun, which is so interesting that you can only find 3 videos on it now, when back there, I mean, everybody knew about it. And then suddenly he is collaborating with these guys called Ether Force, and then something happened, there was a big fallout, and then you never hear from him again. Other than, as I said, he is active on Twitter and he has his own website, but it's all about his electrical research. It's nothing about radio astrology. It's nothing about astrophysics or anything about the sun or solar activity. So let's continue on now that we've got that information from Eric Dollard. And I found it interesting because remember how he said that it's a veil, that the outer surface of the sun is a veil? Well, there was a guy called Esias Edwards. He was born in 1812 and he died in 1897. He was an elder of the Latter-day Saints, and he left some diaries, and he had some very interesting diaries. And in his diaries, he stated that the sun is hollow. What we see is the outer curtain, which gives light and warmth to all the planets. The dark solar spots, which many have heard of at the time, were openings that would give birth to planets. Now, I don't know whether the sunspots could give birth to planets. It is possible, I suppose. But it's basically saying that the sun is what gave birth to the planets, and that is what makes sense when we look at the laws of correspondence and the sequence of creation. So I will go into that a little bit more soon. I just wanted to first cover a few different things in regards to the sun and Orion and the building blocks of life. Before that, I did find a research paper from Jeffrey Joseph Walensky, where he postulates that young stars like our sun are hollow. Okay, and he is an astrophysicist. So he's got a lot of research papers. If you actually type his name in, you can see that he has put forward a lot of papers. So he would just be a rogue astrophysicist, guys. Okay, he would not be getting any grants, all right? He's a pariah probably in his own community, within his own peers, because he's not sticking with the narrative, okay? The sun is a nuclear furnace. The sun is fusion powered, it's a burning ball of fire in the sky. Even they just couldn't even turn around and say differently now if they wanted to, because it is a religion, right? And if they start saying that they got their theory about the sun wrong, then that would put doubt into everything else that these scientists state as fact, all right? And the masses could not handle that, all right? Our system continues on in the way it does because everyone follows the same religion, and it gives them a sense of security. Okay, everybody believes that pieces of paper have value. Okay, so that's what continues the financial system. Everybody believes that white coat scientists know everything. Okay, you have a question, you just go to a white coat scientist and he'll be able to tell you the answer. And if he doesn't have the answer yet, well, he has a theory, and that theory is pretty much, well, the truth, okay? Because that's the latest thing. Theories are now the truth, apparently. Okay? Theories, you may as well just accept them as truth. That's the latest explanation we get from the scientific community when you state that Darwin's theory of evolution is just a theory. Oh, but theories are, pretty much fact now, all right? Because, everything that we have put forward can't be argued. No, it can be argued, but they won't accept anybody else's arguments because it's peer-reviewed. Peer-reviewed means they're a little club, and they get to decide on what science is right and what science is wrong. Okay, and they've got a religious following because they really are like priests. Okay, they're priests of the masses is who they are. And I still have people who follow my channel who are still talking about the speed of light. You know, I mean, you have to understand you can't cherry pick from NASA's theories. Okay, you can't still have one foot in NASA's door and one foot in this knowledge. Remember the Fool card. You have to begin again. Okay, you can't trust them. And light does not travel. So no, that supernova that just went off in the Pinwheel Galaxy or the Greater Bear constellation, that could have just happened. That could have happened last week. That could have, you know, light doesn't travel. And that's why I'm showing you these diagrams of Walter Russell, because it's not only Eric Dollard that's telling you that light doesn't travel. Walter Russell is telling you that light doesn't travel. And he has written a book about it called The Secret of Light. And I would recommend anybody who isn't familiar with Walter Russell should go and study the research of Walter Russell, because he is a very, very what would I say? So in 2012, Walter Russell was really well known, and there was a lot of study. You know, people were, you know how people are about Tesla these days, you know, Nikola Tesla. And there was a bit of a Nikola Tesla following back there, but he had a lot of following, you know, a big following. And it seems to be people have forgotten Walter Russell's work. So I would suggest go back and look at Walter Russell's work if you are not familiar with him, because underrated. Okay, we always hear about Tesla, but we don't hear about Walter Russell. And Walter Russell accounted for God in his theory, in his model, in his universal model. So I will give you a little bit more information into Walter Russell's theory of light in a minute, but I just did want to cover a few interesting articles in regards to the Sun and Orion, both containing the building blocks of life. Okay, so this is going to factor into the other information, the esoteric knowledge that I'm going to give you after I read a little bit of these articles. All of the articles are underneath the video, so you can go and look at them yourself and research more into it, because there's definitely more information out there, but I only have a couple of hours to bring you guys this information, and so I can't, you know, bring everything because I've got quite a bit to cover anyway. So the first article is the Sun basically contains the building blocks of life. This article just came out in May this year. Okay, and it goes on to say that the first building blocks of life on Earth may have formed thanks to eruptions from our Sun, a new study finds. A series of chemical experiments show how solar particles colliding with gases in Earth's early atmosphere can form amino acids and carboxylic acids, the basic building blocks of proteins and organic life. So there's that. Again, building a picture with evidence. You know, I mean, they're finding this. Orion also contains the building blocks of life. Astronomers studying data from the Herschel Space Observatory, now out of operation, have discovered that ultraviolet starlight can be a key to creating fundamental molecules necessary to the formation of life, and that is carbon atoms connected to hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and other elements. So basically, it says the Sun is a driving source of almost all life on Earth. Now we have learned that starlight drives the formation of chemicals that are precursors to chemicals that we need to make life. So it's like Orion provides the Sun chemicals, and the Sun's then reacting with those chemicals and it is being created when the Sun hits our atmosphere. Okay, see how the law of correspondence is working again, and they're all working together. This, you know, everything is connected. Everything is connected. And so the Orion Nebula and the Sun both contain the building blocks of life. We can clearly see that the latest close-up photos of sunspots are not showing nuclear fusion, but a hollow sun. So I'm just reiterating, I'm just writing that down. So I've already gone through that. So yeah, so Orion is the closest star nursery to our sun, okay, in our solar system. So Orion is birthing the stars, okay, and the stars are birthing the planets, and the planets are birthing the moons, and we are being created from that, you know, operation, that divine operation, because it, as Eric Dollard said, they don't know what is powering the sun because it comes from counter space. Counter space is the ethereal plane. Okay, it's coming from beyond something that they can define. It's coming from the indefinable. That is why atheists are idiots. Okay, because atheists cannot explain what the causal event, what caused the Big Bang. Okay, they'll say, oh, everything's caused by the Big Bang. Everything was created by the Big Bang. Big Bang. What caused the Big Bang? See, it comes from something beyond the definable. It's not definable. It's beyond the material world, because the material world is only half of the universal design. The material world is only the extension of the ethereal plane. Okay, and remember how we talk about the macrocosm to the microcosm and everything in degrees. So that is the law of correspondence again, and we can look to the chain of being. Okay, it's a great illustration to look at. I've mentioned it in lots of different live streams, where everything higher to lower, and this is also what Hermetics explains, is that it's vibration. Okay, so the higher the vibration, the lighter, the less dense, okay, it is. And the lower the vibration, you know, it becomes gross matter, okay, right down to the rock that is, you know, vibrating at a very, very low vibration, which is why it's a rock. Okay, everything in different vibrations. I mean, this is literally, you know, quantum physics. Okay, this is quantum physics. All right, and you know how they're always looking for the God particle? They're not going to find it. It's indefinable. It's God, not definable. Just like the soul, not definable. Just like consciousness. You know how they talk about transplanting consciousness into computers? Losers. Not definable. How can you transplant something when you can't even define what consciousness is? Okay, so this is where modern science struggles, because modern science is only about the material world. Modern science ignores half of the equation, and that is why they are half blind. And even Einstein said that science and religion needed each other, and that's what he meant when he said religion. Because otherwise science is half blind. You cannot continue to research into the phenomena of our universe if you're not acknowledging that there's something beyond the material world. The causal effect, the causal events that are affecting the material world come from beyond the material world. And that is why even today, when people get so caught up in all of the politics and everything that's happening in the media and all this distraction, that everything happening now is basically, you know, an effect that is beyond the material. You know, that's why religions still have so much power, because they know that. The Catholic Church still has so much power because they have the truth. They know. And they want us all to be atheists and just to concentrate on the material world, because that is when we're in the grasp of the devil. That is when Satan has us in his grasp, because Satan and the devil is just a personification for the material world. And somebody that is in the clutches of Satan is somebody who only understands himself as a material being, doesn't understand that he also has a soul. So I am here to try and help people understand that other part of themselves, because it's very important to have that understanding. Okay, there's no use going and reading all these books and going and listening to all of these gurus and these new ages and these priests and everyone else when they're not teaching you about your soul. And I can't tell you how many YouTube preachers I listen to that never talk about the soul. Never. Hardly ever mentioned. Right, so that information about the sun and Orion brings me to my video that I made from back in 2015, actually, guys. And you can see that I've got a screenshot of my video that I put out. It's a part 2, actually. I put out 2 parts. And I also have taken a diagram from that video, and I'm showing you the diagram of how it works from the galactic core to the Orion Nebula, to the sun, to the planets, to the moon, to us. Now, I didn't have that information back in 2015 with the planets and all of that. I was just basically the sun and then us, okay? And that is because we are building upon the information that we collect over time, okay? So back in 2015, I didn't have information that I have now. So, of course, I was not actually putting together the pieces as clearly as I can now, because I didn't have all the information. And so it's not to say that that information is incorrect. It's just to say that that information is incomplete. So that is what this video request that I made, you know, when I was requesting more information. It wasn't I was requesting more theories or different theories. I'm requesting more information along the lines of what I'm already providing here to create a clearer picture of what I've already put back together. I don't need any more theories. Okay. I've got the truth. Okay. I've got the knowledge and the information already. And I just feel sorry for people that can't identify that. You know, it's interesting because people will often tell me, oh, nobody can have the truth. Really? Because they seem to have it back in, you know, ancient times, because they encoded it within all of this esoteric knowledge. So somebody had the truth at some time. So if somebody had the truth back then, why couldn't somebody have the truth now? If somebody understood the esoteric symbols back then, why couldn't they understand it now? It's just a matter of committing yourself to researching it, which is what I have done. I'm no genius. I'm just someone that is like a dog with a bone when it comes to wanting to know answers. And I just don't believe what other people tell me. I've got to go see it for myself. A lot of the time somebody will tell me something and I'll not believe them, and then I'll go look it up, and then it was right what they were saying. You know, and I'm like, yeah, you were right. But at the time, like, I'm just never, you know, have never been one of those people that believe anybody just off what they say, which is why I won't listen to channelers. Not to say that channeling can't actually produce some good information and some good knowledge, but, you know, sorry, I need to see it for myself and confirm it for myself. And that is what we have to do with this knowledge. We cannot just listen to people tell us what to believe. You guys can't just listen to me tell you what to believe. It doesn't work that way. Okay, it's just going to stay a belief, all right? It's just going to stay shallow. You're building your house on sand if you're just listening to me, okay? You've got to build your house on rock. And the only way you can do that and put down strong roots, okay, is to go and research the knowledge for yourself. There's no shortcuts, guys. There is no shortcuts. I'm sorry to tell you that there is no shortcuts. You have to go and do the research. You have to go and do the study. But as I've said to somebody, what is your soul worth? Because literally, you are determining what your soul is worth to universal design. Because the universe requires you to show and prove yourself as worthy to continue on as part of its design. And to do that, you can either be very kind, which is really hard in these times, okay? Very hard to be a kind person. I think kind people are born that way. I don't think you're brought up and you can be kind. I think, yes, I do think in some ways that compassion and empathy is taught. But I just think that people who are kind, it comes from another place, and I just don't think you can try and be kind. I think you're either kind or you're not. I probably wouldn't consider myself a kind person. I try to be, but it's an effort because a lot of the times people piss me off and I have to remind myself that, they know not what they do. All right? Pity them. Okay? And I have to try and find compassion for them and try, children, different story. Children, my heart. Love children so much, would do anything for a child. But adults, different story. And I would not, if it was just, if my soul was reliant on me just being kind, I would fail, I'm afraid. So the way that we can ensure that we are considered worthy to universal design is to seek out knowledge, because in seeking out knowledge you are proving your worth. You're not just some empty soul, mindless drone that's caught up in the system, that doesn't give, doesn't care about anything other than football, beer, reality TV, and getting shit-faced every weekend. I mean, that is literally 99% of humanity's existence. Okay. And that includes modern Christians and New Agers. I'm sorry, they're just as brainwashed. Modern Christians are just looking for a saviour. They are lazy. They are spiritually lazy. They are mentally lazy. And they are cowardly. Okay. They aren't interested in knowledge. They will not look outside their Bible. And they just regurgitate every single thing that their clergy tell them. In fact, their clergy regurgitate every single thing that the Catholic Church have told them. Okay, and the Catholic Church was literally burning people alive a few hundred years ago. So I don't know if Jesus is going to return and be proud of the fact that the Catholic Church were murdering, torturing, burning people alive and hacking them to death in his name. Don't know if that could be considered Christ-like behaviour, but they were. So we can see that they weren't Christ-like. We can see that they're not godly men. And yet we've got modern Christians and Catholics, but modern Christians anyway, because they're all taking their canon from the Catholic Church, okay? Because the canon was decided 1700 years ago, and I don't give a shit. People try and argue, it was the Nicene Council. It was the Nicene. I don't care. It started with the Council of Nicaea. Okay, I don't care how many other councils later and how many other years later the canon was created. We don't even know anyway. All right, because the Catholic Church have been writing their own freaking story all that time. We don't even know if the books that were voted on to be part of the Bible 1700 years are still the books we have today. We don't know, okay? But apparently that's okay according to Christians, because they're still happy to follow them. Okay, modern Christians. The only true Christians are the Gnostic Christians, and they were exterminated by the Catholic Church. So if you want to find real Christianity and understand real Christianity, then I would go read the Nag Hammadi Gospels. And then after you've read the Nag Hammadi Gospels and studied the Nag Hammadi Gospels, I would study the Kabbalion. And then after you've studied the Kabbalion, I would go read the Divine Pymander and all of the other Hermetic texts. And after you've read that, then I would read the Bible, and then I would read the Hindu texts, and then I would read the Norse mythology, and then I would read the Persian mythology, and then I would read the Hopi mythology. See where I'm going here? Okay, you have to continually go and look for knowledge. As I said, what is your soul worth? So that video in 2015 was titled The Ancient Egyptian Understanding of the Soul's Connection to the Sun, the Moon and Orion. As I said, I didn't actually understand that from the sun the planets were birthed. I may have understood it, but it just didn't solidify within me. Sometimes that happens. You get information and it doesn't really sit with you enough to kind of form a understanding for it, like really deeply. Okay, so I could have known that back then, but it didn't sit with me enough for me to repeat it in that video. So now we know that, and that makes sense because, you know, the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans basically used Jupiter to symbolize the creator. So Jupiter was the creator of our solar system. Okay, and we can actually see all of the planets and Jupiter, you know, and the moons and that as physical appendages of God's physicality. So you can see the galactic core as God's soul, okay, the Orion Nebula as God's mind, all right, and the sun and the planets as God's physicality, all right. And then we've covered the 3 different planes of existence as well, because that's what Hermetic science teaches us. We've got to always make sure that we've accounted for the mind, the mental, the soul, the spirit, and the physical matter. Okay, always in everything. So if we see some phenomena happen in the celestial realms, okay, we have to also relay that on those 3 levels. All right. So if we see Orion, and Orion, we think, okay, Orion is the mind, is the mental universe, okay, well, it is a fragment, a fractal of the mental universe. Then we have to relate that to the soul and physicality. We can't just keep it as mind. We have to expand upon that so we don't get stuck just within that little, you know, corner of the room, and we don't want to move outside of that because, you know, that sounds what we want to, you know, where we want to stay. That's not actually applying Hermetic law, though, or the Hermetic principles. We have to continue on. We have to make sure that we are attributing that and acknowledging that that's going to happen on all 3 planes. Right, so the sun is the material heart of Orion, bringing the mental projection of God into material form. Okay, so God's thinking us into existence, literally. And through the sun, that is like the lens that is creating God's reality, which is us. We are existing because he is experiencing reality and the material world and himself through us. That's how he experiences himself biologically, because, well, the planets are not conscious in the way that we are. That's why it says that we were created in the image of God, meaning that God doesn't look like us, okay? It's not like God's a man. It's that God has a mind, a soul, and physicality, and he has put that all together in a little package, and he's called it a human, okay? And he's placed us on his little kingdom here, and we're all actually experiencing life so that he can experience himself. Okay, that's how it works. Unfortunately, in these lower ages, because we're in the Iron Age now, and so we move down the cycle, the ether recedes, okay, and I've spoken about this in other videos. If you're not aware of the cycle of ether and the great year, go back and watch those other live streams and other videos on my channel, because I've actually got research videos about this as well. So when we move down the great year and we're in the Iron Age as we are now, so the divinity, the divine portion within all of us, it fades. Okay, it starts fading at the beginning of the Bronze Age. So it goes Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age. And so there's 288 divine souls within humanity, okay, God's children, and they are the direct extension, direct divine extension of the Creator. Okay, so they are the anchor of the Creator onto his kingdom. That's what the anchor represents, okay, when you see it in esoteric symbolism. And from the divine souls, humanity was created. And so they are the next degree down, because remember how I said everything happens in degrees. So we've got the divine, And then they are in degrees in themselves, because they're the gold, the silver, and the bronze in their own race, okay, because there's different degrees within the divine souls. And the bronze souls, the bronze are the demigods. And so they are not fully created and emanated from the Creator. They are created within the womb of the divine female and birthed on the physical plane after the creation of the divine female and male. And so she births the demigod onto the material plane. So here's the link between the gods and mankind. There's a link between them. So they have the divine portion within them. We go down the cycle. The divine portion fades. We don't know who the divine are anymore. Okay, we all have this divine portion within us, by the way. It's just within the divine souls to a higher degree, and it's a little bit different within them because they're immortal. They will go through into the next cycle regardless. We, however, we have to show our worth, which is what I was telling you before, that we have to show universal mind that we are worthy of being part of his experience by seeking out knowledge of him and ourselves. Okay, more importantly, of ourselves than him. But you cannot know that you've got a soul without knowing who the creator of your soul is. So they go hand in hand. So we lose access to that light because the ether is receding, and this is the principle of rhythm. So in the golden age, we've got a lot of ether. God is very present on the material plane. The gods are all known. They look different to mortals. They glow. They have access to godlike, abilities and skills. But then as we go down the great year, they lose those abilities, and that light fades within them. This is also spoken about in Critias with Plato. He uses the Atlanteans in place of divine. He's symbolizing the divine race by using the Atlanteans. And so the portion fades and they just appear like mortals, okay? And then they act out the same as mortals do. They don't even know who they are. They transgress divine law. They indulge in all their vices. And it's all about them also experiencing the physical world in that way as well, so that they have the full spectrum of experience, okay? They can't always just be the divine and the gods because, then when they're always responsible and they're the guides and teachers, they have to have that time where they're just completely free of that responsibility. And so, and then they're chastised, of course, because, we're in these times now where the Antichrists know all this knowledge, by the way. Okay, they have all this knowledge. They know all about the divine, and they mock and ridicule them, and they use the celebrities to do it. Kanye West is one of them. Kim Kardashian is another one of them. Kanye West, if you reduce his name in numerology, 33. Okay. Kim Kardashian, KK. Okay. A K is 11, the 11th letter in the alphabet. KK is 22. So, 22. So it's all there. Okay. So they are the gods of the mortal man. And because, the real gods, the real divine, God's children are not present on the material plane, the Antichrists have taken over, and they are literally mirroring every divine operation in their own way. And I've also mentioned this before. So we are experiencing, dark and light within our incarnations on the physical plane. So we can't just look at these times and think, why would God do this? It's not fair. Why would we live in such an evil time? Well, it's only a few thousand years, believe it or not. And I think it goes for 2,400 years in the Iron Age. I do have a diagram that gives you not the exact years because you don't know the exact. But we are in the last degree. I can tell you that. Okay, we are in the last degree. Every degree is 72 years. We are in the last degree. That's why they're turned into psychopaths. That's why they are basically destroying us as a society, and also as a divine, our divinity, because they are encouraging us to be degenerate. They are encouraging our children to engage in this type of behavior, confusing us about the genders. I mean, does anybody really think it's a coincidence that in the last 2 years, Target, Nordstrom's, North Face, Adidas, Nike, all of these companies are putting out all of this pride wear? Okay, and now they're pushing it at our children. I just saw an article where Nordstrom's is also putting out pride wear for babies, for 3-month-olds. Okay, and this is also Target doing the same thing. All right, and creating swimwear where little boys can tuck away their little bits and bobs in case they just don't know what gender they are yet. This is insanity, people. Okay, this is insanity. And anybody who's going along with this is insane. And I am triggering so many algorithms right now. Yeah, I can tell you I'm fully on their radar because they are trawling through all videos on YouTube with their algorithms. And I know they do it because my previous live streams, they go and separate them into chapters. And whatever I'm talking about, they will name the chapter. So this chapter will be named that transgenderism is insanity, is a mental illness. And the reason that they are doing this is because they know their time is limited. We are moving towards a tipping point. And all of the different cultures spoke about it. Every single culture, you won't find a culture that didn't speak about what's coming. There's a lot of different names. Judgment Day, the Apocalypse, Armageddon, Ragnarok. Okay, the Persians had a name for it. They all have a name for it. Okay, and they all spoke about the Great Year. But isn't it interesting? Suddenly that doesn't really factor into any of our science anymore. So they don't want us knowing the truth. So I just want people to realize that when I say that we are experiencing the creators, like the creator is experiencing himself through us, I don't want people to think that this is life. This is the extent of what life is on this planet. It's just that we are in very evil times. Evil has taken control of our world. Of course it's going to be miserable and shit. Okay? But this isn't the extent of life on our beautiful Gaia. Okay? We have to remember that. And we can't get caught up in the bullshit. And that's why when you understand this knowledge to the level you do, you know that this is just a small part of the experience. And to God, it's just a blink of the eye. To us, it's a lot longer. But time is different with the Creator. Okay? And the Creator wants to experience everything. Okay? Because, you know, the world is not just black or white. It's, you know, various different shades. Okay? It's everything. And that is the principle of polarity, okay? Hot and cold are just different degrees of the same thing. Evil and good, different degrees of the same thing. Love and hate, different degrees of the same thing. Okay, we're just experiencing a different degree of something. So don't lose hope. Go and look up this information and knowledge about your soul. Find out who you are and understand you are more than just your physical body. All right, so when you listen, if you want to listen to that video, I will put a link underneath the video in my Keepers of the Flame, and you can listen to the video in which I'm explaining the connection between the galactic core, and Orion and the Sun and us. So I've kind of just spelled it out a little bit more. So I've gone the galactic core. The ancient Egyptians called the galactic core Atum. Okay. In Judaism, it's called Guff. And it's also called the Tree of Souls or the Treasury of Souls or the Hall of Souls. So basically, when a soul is created, right, it comes from the that soul comes from the galactic core. That's what the galactic core is. It's the medium, it's this thing that souls are made of, okay? So the treasury of souls, it's known as, okay? Then Orion, a fragment of Orion is seeded into that soul, okay, into that soul. So now it has a consciousness, now it has a personality. Then the soul has a personality and a consciousness, and it's seated inside that soul now, or within the soul. So I like to see it as so in our physical. So let me just continue on, and then I'll explain what the soul, you can visualize it like. So the galactic core, we've got the tree of souls, the treasury of souls. The soul is picked from there. A fragment of Orion is seated within the soul. Now it now has an identity. It now has a consciousness. Then it needs a body. So through the sun and the planets, we are given a physical shell. Okay, they interact with each other to create our physicality. And the moon. Okay, the moon is very important for seeding, or for placing, how can I put it, into seeding, would you say it's seeding, into the physical body. Okay, so and the moon is like the womb, okay, connected to the creator, but also connected to the physical material earth, to place the soul that has now got a consciousness into the physical body. Okay, and so the planets and the moon all play a part in that. And so then divine man was created. So if we're looking at, so this is how all souls are created. Okay, but this was also how the divine souls were created, and the symbolism for the first male and female divine soul is Adam and Eve. Okay, that there's not really people called Adam and Eve. Okay, that wasn't their names, and there weren't only two. They're also called Castor and Pollux, and I've forgotten the female names, but they were both twins with females. And I've gone through and explained all that in previous live streams, the whole creation process of the divine souls and how they were seeded onto the physical plane. So basically from those divine souls, then mortal man were created as well. And then it's just a continuous cycle now of souls being regenerated into physical form, and the physical form dying, and then the soul comes, returns to the ethereal plane, and then another body is created, and the soul goes back into that body and has that life. And it's all destined. It's all part of destiny. From the time you were born, you were imprinted. There's a blueprint of your life, of your destined paths. You get to choose which path you are going to take, but they're all there. They're all there already. Okay, so more information on that in my previous live streams as well. So I can't go into it right now, or we're going to go past 2 hours. So in Kabbalah, the creator is called Adam Kadmon, who is a supernal, androgynous, and microcosmic entity, okay, co-equal in size with the universe, and human souls are fragments of the creator cycling out of the great Otsar, the treasury of souls. So that's Kabbalah saying that as well. So that, again, giving this understanding of how we are created on the ethereal level, on that esoteric level, which you are never going to hear from your clergy, you are never going to hear from a New Age guru, and you are never going to hear from a scientist, okay? If you want to know the truth, you have to go and find it for yourself, because they don't want you to know this information. And so I just wanted to reiterate about what I'm explaining to you and how I'm explaining that to you. It's pretty easy to grasp, isn't it? I mean, it's not really that hard to grasp what I'm telling you. You don't need to have a degree in mathematics or calculus or algebra or chemistry. You don't need any of that to kind of understand the creation process. It's probably a little involved and deeper than most subjects that you normally discuss. But it's not that difficult for you to get your head around, you know, and understand. And that's why they created universities. And they created subjects like calculus and algebra and chemistry and all of this advanced physics and these types of, you know, educational subjects that make you feel that you are lacking intelligence to understand how you are created or how the universe was created. And that's what they want you to believe. Where in actual fact, you were gifted, the Creator gifted you an intelligence and an intellect so that you can understand how you were created. It's not that difficult. I mean, of course, it's more involved in how I'm explaining it here. I mean, I'm just bringing together the fragments and trying to make some, you know, clearer understanding of what we've got. But you can see, even if I had more information, and I can tell you right now, it's in the Vatican. Okay. All of it. Exactly how the planets work, how each of the elements in the planets work to form physicality, what the moon does, you know, what the sun does. They have it all, okay? It's all there. They know it. Even Eric Dollard was saying that they know full well how the sun isn't nuclear, isn't a nuclear bomb, isn't burning, you know, ball of fire. They know. But they don't want you to know because they want you to be ignorant. They want us to be ignorant. So it's up to you to take that God-gifted intellect and go and discover yourself and go and discover your Creator and go and discover your place in universal design, because we each have a place in universal design. All of us, we're all created individually. You know, each and every one of us are individual. But are you just the dross? Are you just the, you know, part that can be removed because you are of no importance? Because that's how creation sees everything. It's not whether it's fair or not. You know, people like to think they're special. I mean, especially in these times where you can get internet fame simply for just changing clothes in front of a camera. Okay, everyone wants to think they're special, you know, but they're not. None of us are. There's only 288 special souls on this planet. The rest of us have to prove ourselves. And we prove ourselves through our intellect, not through how we look or what we wear or how many people like us or how many followers we have. You know, none of that is consequential to anything, to your place in the universe. And this is worldliness as well, and why the Bible says that, you know, to be in the world but not of the world. Very important. So extract yourself and see it for what it really is. Right, so let's get on to a couple of these other really interesting So what I was just going on about how this was pretty simple, that I'm explaining to you that you can get your head around it, okay? Anyone with basic understanding, okay, can get their head around what I was just saying, right? Whether you believe it or not, it's not going to factor into it. But what I'm saying is it's pretty easy. And that is because Occam's razor, the problem-solving principle that recommends searching for explanation constructed with the smallest possible set of elements. Okay, not like what they do with all of their over-explanation. And then everything should be made simple as possible, but no simpler. That's Einstein. Again, you know, as simple as possible, but no simpler. And this is why I love Walter Russell. Anyone can understand his work, okay? You don't need to be a genius mathematician with a degree in frickin' calculus, whatever, to understand the work of Walter Russell and to understand his diagrams. I mean, there's a little bit involved into it, but anybody can actually, if you're committed to learning it, you'll understand it. It's a great read, his Secret of Light. I definitely recommend it. So, talking about the Secret of Light, let's have a look at some of these celestial events that I was talking about. So the first one is the supernova explosion in the constellation of Ursa Major, the Greater Bear. So yes, we've had a supernova explode. So a star has had an outburst, has brightened. It is The closest star to experience a, brightening in 10 years apparently, but as I said, I can't remember them reporting on the last one. And it says it's so bright that you should be able to see it with your backyard telescopes for a few months. Though it will just be a point of light, but it doesn't matter. You can still see it. So it is also, it looks like a whitish blue colour. Okay? Interesting. Keep that in mind. Now, I was just going to talk about quickly Walter Russell's, his explanation of how light does not travel. And so when we look to this supernova and we're like, oh, well, that happened millions of years ago, and lots of people say this. I mean, I've watched a few videos about this supernova and people saying, well, it's happened 2 million years or it's whatever, 21 million years ago. No, that's not how light works. Okay, that's how NASA wants you to think light works. So light does not travel. Walter Russell was born in the 19th of May 1871 and he died on the 19th of May in 1963. And he was a polymath, a scientist, a cosmologist and a philosopher. And he successfully predicted radioactive elements that were found later. And they were undiscovered when he actually said that these elements exist. And then later on, they literally discovered these elements, which were deuterium, tritium, and neptunium, and plutonium. Okay, he discovered he predicted that they would discover those elements. Very, very smart man. From his book, The Secret of Light, light only seems to travel. It is but one more of the countless illusions caused by wave motion. Waves of the ocean seem to traverse the ocean, but they only appear to do so. For waves are pistons in the universal engines, and pistons operate up and down. Wave pistons of light or the ocean operate radially and spirally inward and outward, toward and away from gravity. Waves of light do not travel. They reproduce each other from the wave field to wave field of space. The planes of zero curvature, which bound all wave fields, act as mirrors to reflect light from one field to another. So basically, light acts like a wave. And if you imagine that in the ocean, when you see a wave happening, it's giving the appearance that it's moving, but it's just passing energy to another wave. Okay? Good way to see it. There's lots of good videos about Walter Russell's information where people have given really good explanations, like with illustrations, and explained it in further detail. So I definitely recommend you go and look at it. The sunlight we feel upon our bodies is not actual light from the sun. What is actually happening is that the sun is reproducing its own condition on the earth by extending the reproductions out through cold space into an ever enlarging wave field, until those reproductions begin to converge again towards our center of gravity into even smaller wave fields. So that just gives you a little bit of an excerpt from his book, The Secret of Light. So I definitely recommend going and reading that. So it's interesting that we're seeing this star brightening in Ursa Major, the Greater Bear, because it actually features in a prophecy from Johann Friede, and it's one of the prophecies that I feature on my channel. It's one of the main ones, one of my favorite ones, and so I have that as one of my main videos when you first visit my channel. And literally he talks about the Greater Bear. He says, when the nights will be filled with more intensive cold and the day with heat, a new life will begin in nature. The heat means radiation from Earth, the cold, the waning light of the sun. Well, interesting that Eric Dollard is saying that the solar flux has been weakening, okay, and that the last solar cycle before this one was the lowest in recorded history. Okay, so seems to be on point with that. Only a few more years and you will begin to be aware that the sunlight has become perceptibly weaker. When even your artificial light will cease to give service, the great event of the filament will be near. The nebula of the Greater Bear will arrive in the vicinity of Earth and will fill the space of 500 suns at the horizon. It will more and more cover up the light of the sun until the days will be like nights at full moon. The illumination will not come from the moon but from Orion, which constellation by the light of Jupiter will send forth its rays on the Greater Bear and will dissolve its nebula with the force of light. Now this has been translated I think Johann Friede was Swedish, or he was Scandinavian. So it could be lost in translation, a lot of what he just explained. But we can take some major events from what he's saying. At least we can see some, relevance in. He's talking about the Greater Bear constellation. He's talking about Orion. He's talking about Jupiter. Okay, and he's talking about light. All right, so I just find it interesting. We're now seeing this starburst happening in Ursa Major, the Greater Bear constellation. Now, Ursa Major was also known as the Greater Bear constellation, and it's the third largest constellation. In Roman mythology, Ursa Major features in mythology connected to Jupiter, the symbol for the creator. The story is about Jupiter becoming enamored with the beauty of a woman called Callisto, and after pursuing her, she gives birth to their son. When Jupiter's wife Juno finds out, she is outraged, and so to protect her from Juno's rage, Jupiter places her in the sky as a large bear and their son in the sky as the smaller bear. In the Greek version of the story, it's the same, but the characters are replaced with Zeus, and Zeus being Jupiter, and Juno is replaced with Hera as Zeus's wife. So remember that the creator is androgynous. So when we talk about the creator's wife, we're talking about the other part of the creator, the female part of the creator, because the creator is androgynous. Okay, so that is why it always talks about, it sounds like God is having an affair on her, but that's just a way that they are explaining how God impregnates the divine female with the seed of the demigod. Okay, and this is also how you explain the virgin, like this is what the symbolism of the virgin conception, okay, with the Virgin Mary. Okay, it's the same thing. It's the symbolism for the understanding of how the demigod was created, because the demigod is the link between the gods and mortal man, because the gods aren't fully human in that way, because they were created differently. This is first creation. This doesn't happen. This is when we were all first created. It would have been the same time that the sun created the Jupiter and the planets. And so when creation first happened of this system, this solar system, this organism, because it all works together as a single organism, even though it looks to us separate, it really isn't. It would have all happened at the same time, okay? And everything would have been created at the same time, okay? So that's also like why the Titans are separate to the Olympians, okay? Because it's describing the first creation. Like Adam and Eve is different to Jesus and Mary Magdalene, because Adam and Eve is first creation, okay? But then from then on, it's just the incarnations of those souls on the physical plane, on the kingdom after first creation. So, and then another very interesting celestial event happened, and this one's to do with Orion, because it's Betelgeuse, which is the left shoulder of Orion. When we're looking up at Orion, it's Orion's left shoulder. Well, Betelgeuse is brightening more than any other time in recorded history. And Betelgeuse is also known as Alpha Orionis, okay? One of the brightest stars in the sky is behaving strangely, pulsating from bright to dim, twice as fast as usual, and giving scientists an unprecedented insight into how stars die. Notice how they always have to say the stars are dying, and when our star dies, and our star's only got so many, millions of years left, and then our star, it's a load of shit, okay? So as Eric Pollard said, it's always about destruction with them, okay? That's their model. Their model is always death and destruction. Okay, and that is not what is happening. All right, whatever is happening to Betelgeuse, it's got nothing to do with the star dying. And you know what? Energy never diminishes anyway. Like even if a star was to turn in on itself and collapse in on itself, the energy just transfers elsewhere. The star hasn't died. Okay, It's just transformed. All right. So this whole theory they've got, again, it's all about physicality. Okay. It's always about destruction, physicality, materialism. It's a burning ball of fire that's about to explode. Okay. Load of bullshit. So Betelgeuse is the closest red giant to Earth and has long been understood to move between brighter and dimmer in 400-day cycles. Well, why? Why? Why 400-day cycles? Ask scientists that, and I bet you they can't tell you. Okay? Because they have no freaking clue. All right? Just don't they have no freaking clue about how the sun is transforming and converting energy. Okay? Because they just don't know. All right? But they can't tell you that because they've got to give the appearance that they are all-knowing. From late 2019 to 2020, it underwent a dimming. So you may remember that there was a time where they were saying that that Betelgeuse was dimming, okay? And then they were talking about this dust went in front of it. Now, that's interesting when you listen to the Australian Aboriginal information about Orion. Think about how the Great Dimming happened, okay, last year, and they're talking about that it was a big dust cloud was obscuring the view of the star, and that's what caused the dimming, right? But now the star is brightening to the brightest it's ever been in recorded history, okay? 150% more than its normal brightness, all right? So it's gone from being the 10th brightest in the sky, the 10th brightest star in the sky, to the 7th brightest star in the sky. Now, before we go on to the Australian Aboriginal information about Betelgeuse, I just want to remind you now that we've seen in the Greater Bear constellation a blue coloured star, or bluish whitish coloured star, okay? And now the Hopi prophecy, and now we see Betelgeuse, which is a red coloured star, right? And now the Hopi prophecy. Let's listen to what they have to say. The return of the blue star Kachina, who is also known as Nungu Sahu, will be the alarm clock that tells us of a new day, a new way of life, a new world that is coming. This is where the changes will begin. They will start as fires that burn within us, and we will burn up with desires and conflict if we do not remember the original teachings and return to the peaceful way of life. Not far behind, the twins will come the purifier, the red Kachina, who will bring the day of purification. When the purifier comes, we will see him first as a small red star, which will come very close and sit in our heavens watching us. Right, so I don't know if that is to do with these celestial events that we've just seen happen, but I'm saying it's pretty interesting that we're seeing these two stars behaving very, very, differently to how they normally behave, especially Betelgeuse. Okay, we're suddenly seeing these events, and the Hopi prophecy is telling us that we should watch for these events of a blue star and a red star. Okay, now I'm not saying that this is what the blue and red Kachina are. It could be that these are just a precursor to the purifier, and whatever the purifier is. It could be that Betelgeuse and the dust from Betelgeuse and the energy from Betelgeuse is what the purifier is what purifies our world, okay? And that when Betelgeuse brightens, that dust is on the way, okay? Now, I'm just saying this because listen to the Aboriginal information that they have about this. So the Aboriginal mythology about Orion and Betelgeuse is that there was a man called Nearuna. Well, that was what they called Orion, okay? They called him Nearuna. And he was a skilled hunter. So again, what's Orion called? The hunter, okay? Who was attracted by the Ugarelia sisters, which were the Pleiades, okay? And he pursues them across the sky. Bangudlia is the eldest of the sisters. And so she stands in between him, Orion, and the sisters, right? And she taunts him. And so he lifts his club in his right hand. And they've got Betelgeuse and he fills it with fire magic. Okay, when he raises his hand and he fills it with fire magic and readies to throw it at her. But Cambodia lifts her left foot, Aldebaran, and fills it with fire magic and kicks the dust into Niyaruna's face. So I just find that interesting that we were seeing them, they're mentioning fire magic and dust being kicked up. And then another tribe from Australia as well, so another Aboriginal tribe, different one. They have like their different mythologies. They call Beetlejuice Wayangari, and they believe that when the brightness of Wayangari increases, it signals the beginning of the Aboriginal initiation rites. When young men must refrain from being around women and control their carnal desires. Now, interestingly, how they say that when the star brightens, right, that they have to start, curbing their carnal urges and controlling their sensual nature and their carnal nature. Because remember, back in the Hopi prophecy, it says that happens when the blue star starts shining, that it will start fires within us that will burn up the desires and conflict, if we do not remember the original teachings. So causing us to, act on our carnal urges if we don't keep them in check. I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty sure that we're seeing a big example of that in these times, and they all walk around with rainbows and flags and encouraging our children to engage in this behaviour too. So anyway, just thought that was interesting. So that's it, guys. Right on 2 hours. Very proud of myself, because you know how I normally go forever. So that's it. I literally have come to the end of all of my notes. Hopefully that was very coherent for you guys. And I explained myself well enough. Thank you for joining me. I know it was an impromptu live stream. It was just that I did put up the Saturday night live stream and then wasn't happy with, it was just very incoherent. I hadn't got my notes together properly. I wanted to present you guys something on Saturday night because it was going to be my first live stream with my new time being every Saturday night my time, and that's going to be very, very early in the morning for you guys over in the US, like 6:30. And for you guys in the UK, that's going to be 11:30 on a Saturday. And so 8:30 p.m. Saturdays Australian time is now when my live streams are going to be. And so, as I said, I was wanting to get something out, and I just kind of rushed it out without really going through all my notes. And I did actually think I had them a bit better together, a bit more coherent than they actually were. Because it was only when I was reading them that I was realizing that I hadn't actually organized them, and I had things that were like part of something else joined with something else. And anyway, I just thought, look, this knowledge deserves to be relayed to you guys in a way that is coherent and that you can understand. So yes, I hope I've done that tonight. So next live stream will be this coming Saturday, as I said, 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. That is going to be 11:30 a.m. for you guys in the UK, and sorry you guys over in the US, 6:30 I think, or 7:30. Actually, I think it might be, I think it is 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. So I'm sorry that it's so early for you guys, but it just suits my time schedule so much better on a Saturday night at 8:30, or 8. I might even make it 8. So I'll just see how I go. I'll start with 8:30 for now. We'll see how that goes, but it will be a Saturday night. Just works so much better for my time schedule. And look, it doesn't really matter anyway, because all of the information is uploaded in a video. So if you missed the live stream, you can still listen to what was discussed later on anyway. So, all right. Well, thank you to Rochelle for moderating, and thank you to everyone that joined us and stayed through the whole stream. You're very welcome, Aussie Gold. That is totally okay. I'm here to help you guys and to, basically help you put together all of this information for yourself. Okay, rather than just listening to me, to actually go and do the research for yourself. And as I've said, it's all about just beginning. Okay, so don't worry about where do I start. Just start somewhere, and the path will open up to you. That's how this works. As soon as you are motivated to go and find answers, as soon as you are, wanting to take that first step back to yourself and to your creator and discover yourself and your creator, your path will open up to you. That's how it works. And you just walk that path and the information will come to you as you need it. That's just how it works. And you don't even need, it may be different for you than how it was for me, because we're all different. Okay, so don't use me as your template. I'm just saying this is what helped with me, and I really do think it's important that you start with a really good foundation to build upon. And so my foundation was Hermetics, the 7 principles, the Gnostic Gospels, because I know that they haven't been bastardized by the Catholic Church. Okay, and then all of the other mythologies and all of the other biblical scriptures as well. So you want to read the Quran, you want to read the Hindu texts. I mean, you just want to read as much ancient literature as you can get your hands on. Okay, and the more you read, it just gives you a broader perspective of everything. Okay, and then you'll start to see certain things repeat over and over again. And when you see them repeat, you take that and you put it aside and you build upon it, because that's how esoteric knowledge works. Okay, it is encoded with lots of stories and over explanation and symbols, but there's core truths across all cultures, and you find those core truths and you take them, and then that is where you start putting that together to have an understanding for all of this information and knowledge and truth, because that's what we're after. We're after the truth of who we are, of who our creator is, and universal design and divine operation, and how that all works and how we play a part in all of it, and we all do. So anyway, well, I'm going to leave it here, guys. So I hope you have a lovely evening, have a nice week, and I shall catch you guys on Saturday night. So I hope you can join me then. We're going to be continuing to decode the Gospel of Thomas. Well, I'm leaving it here, and as always, peace out.